Alright, what we're doing today is we're doing some testing on RPM and the speed that we have currently, because we decided to re-gear the truck on our last trip to Moab, climbing some of the passes that we went through from Wyoming to Colorado. Even with the supercharger, it seems like at the given speed the RPM was too low, and the transmission was working very hard, upshifting too much. So we figured we'll just restore the RPMs for a given speed to the factory settings by re-gearing the axles. Factory gear set that comes with from the factory for the truck are 4.11, I believe, and since we're running 35-inch tires, in order to get to within the factory specs, we'll have to go 2 sizes up on the gear set, the ring and pinion. So we decided to go to 488s, and right now, today, we want to measure our speed at 60 miles per hour, and then we also, right now, we're moving out to the hill that we have in our area, fairly steep hill, and so there we'll put the truck in full low, first gear and then second gear, and we'll measure the speed with which it travels with the current gearing, and then of course retest it once we re-gear the truck. What we'll be using for the testing, just the RPM gauge here on the dash, and for the speed we'll be using this scan gauge that is calibrated for this tire size, distance-wise and speed-wise. It's been verified with the GPS, so currently it shows we're going 30 miles an hour. Obviously the speedometer is not calibrated, so it shows a little bit less, because the change in the tire size. RPM should be RPM of the engine, so that shouldn't be affected by the fact that the tires are different size. Alright, so the cruise control is set at 60 miles an hour, and the RPM gauge reads almost exactly 2000 RPMs. Yeah, we'll call it 2000 RPMs at 60 miles an hour with this 411 or 410 gears currently. Also at 60 miles an hour, the speedometer reads 55 exactly. So again, with the old set of gears, speedometer is at 55, with the real speed is 60. And we'll see the parameters or the readings that we'll get in full low second gear, and we seems to be holding up at 9 miles. We'll round it up to 9 miles per hour. RPMs are at 1100 in the second gear, full low, and that's 410 gears in the pumpkins. All right, so full low, first gear, releasing the brake, and we'll see in a little bit the fastest that you will go. The RPM is at exactly 1000 RPMs. The speed is 3.4, or we'll call it 4 miles per hour. So again, 410 gears, factory gears, with 35-inch tires, going on the same hill. First gear in the transfer case in full low, we have, we'll call it 3.5, 4 miles an hour. We'll just round it up to 4 miles an hour at 1000 revolution per minute for the engine. Okay, so the footage that you just saw was recorded 6 months ago. Since that, I put close to 10,000 miles on the new gear set, which, like I mentioned in this first part, are 488 in the pumpkins. What's there to say? After researching it, we went with the Nitto branded ring and pinion. Didn't do anything fancy to it. Some people used the deep freezing process, forgot the name of it, some fancy scientific name, to make it stronger. We just went with our regular old shelf gears. The installation itself, I kind of attempted to film it, but ended up helping Mitch, so did not record the whole installation. I would rate it as above average skill, even though we never have done it. So it's doable if we were able to do it. Pretty much anybody else with a little common sense and a little research. One thing I would recommend is if anybody wants to re-gear it, especially on the Toyotas, in other words, in the axles with a third member, is to look up Weber Auto channel on YouTube. There's a very good instructions there. So anyway, I'm in the same stretch right now as in the first testing, and I'll bring it up to 60 miles per hour, set the cruise control, and let's see what are our readings after the re-gearing. Okay, so it seems like the RPM in overdrive going 60 miles an hour got bumped to by 250 RPMs. Now, I was under the impression that by going to 488s with 35-inch tire, well, actually it's a metric size, it's not exactly 35, it's 315, 75, 17 in my case. The speedometer is not dead on, it's actually showing about 5 miles an hour faster now. So that means that overall gear ratio with the 488s is slightly taller than the factory gear ratio. So my speedometer is still by 5 miles an hour, only now it's showing faster. Before it was showing slower. Drivability definitely improved. The truck the software doesn't require upshifting the transmission, climbing hills as much as it used to be. So in that sense, what we were after definitely resulted in the change that we were looking. So hopefully on the long trips on the highways, there's going to be improvement in that sense. The transmission is not going to hunt as much. Fuel mileage, I was expecting actually worse. I used to, in the same temperature, ambient temperature, air temperature, I was getting On a highway, once the truck is all warmed up, about 14 and a half miles per gallon. It's probably about 14 now. It's hard to say because most of the 10,000 miles that I have put on was winter miles, and definitely winter mileage goes down because of the temperature. And of course there's going to be a benefit in off-road situation with the taller gears, which we will about to test right now. We're almost to the hill that we were testing it the previous time, the previous readings that we were taking. So in about 30 seconds we'll know what is the new speed with the taller gears. All right, so okay, full low. What did I do? I did first second gear, and I think it was right around 9 miles per hour, the last speed, if I remember correctly. And we are down to 7 in the second gear for low. And if we'll switch it to first gear, previous reading was 4 miles per hour, and it's reduced now to 3. So definitely going to be I have to get out of the road, let this truck pass by. So the conclusion is, for off-road, for on-road, if one is to go with bigger tires, it's in my estimation it's definitely worth the trouble and the expense of re-gearing. Definitely by the seat of the pants there is a little bit of feel of faster acceleration from the dead stop, because obviously taller gears helping the it just transfers more torque to the driving wheels, and so there is I don't know, I don't have this is not a sports car, so to me it's not important, but in order to preserve the life of the transmission on the highway and just better control off-road climbing in a situation where the premium is at low speed, high torque application, there's definitely benefit. Also, in a low traction situation, I found it to be an improvement. All the trips that we have done on the snow, definitely I can say there is improvement there. I can use second gear more because there's just a little bit more torque, where previously in the first gear it was too much torque, and you start developing wheel spin, and the second gear just wasn't enough torque required, mushing the throttle, and at some point it would also break the traction. And now it's a lot more controllable, because second gear, like I said, it develops a little bit more torque, so I'm able to start and keep going in the second gear without breaking the traction. So this is our experience with re-gearing the truck. I think I covered pretty much everything. Until the next video, bye bye.